Texas Senator Ted Cruz co-sponsored the bill. His colleague, Senator Katie Britt of Alabama, was unable to join us because of a scheduling conflict. It's good to see you. Welcome back.
Leland, great
Thank
to be
you,
back.
sir. Appreciate it. All right. Other than providing Republicans in swing states the ability to say, I voted to protect IVF, right? I got a smile there. What else does this bill actually do?
Look, this bill is designed to create a federal right, a federal protection to IVF. And IVF has been incredible medical technology. It has enabled millions of parents who couldn't otherwise have kids to have kids. And we see today roughly 2% of all births in America come via IVF. There are over 8 million babies that have been born through IVF. And millions of people are understandably confused and afraid, particularly following the Alabama Supreme Court decision several months ago, where they're afraid that IVF will be taken away. And as you noted in your intro, we also have partisans that are trying to stoke that confusion, stoke that fear.
Okay, fair enough. But in terms of what this bill does, one of the carve-outs, and I understand why, is it would not prevent states from implementing health and safety measures within clinics that provide such services. That is exactly the way red state legislatures got around Roe and tried to shut down abortion in their states by calling them health and safety restrictions. So
it's not because this bill has a categorical prohibition on any state or any local government banning IVF. And the courts would interpret the plain language of that to mean you can't ban IVF. Health and safety, look, the reason for that health and safety language is every medical procedure in a state has health and safety regulations. You don't want just someone to set up a clinic that isn't a basic clinic that protects
You understand
health.
The fear, though, of people saying that this is just opening a back door the same way there was to Roe.
Well, right now, the current law is they can regulate health and safety. So it's not giving them any additional authority. What it's doing is it's setting a categorical prohibition. You cannot ban IVF. Now, look, right now there are no states I know of that want to ban IVF. But that could change, and a lot of people are confused and afraid. And so this bill is important to be able to say it is a matter of federal law that I have a right to have access to this. And part of the reason I introduced it as well, to the best of my knowledge, all 100 senators agree that IVF is important and it needs to be protected. This should be something we can be bipartisan on and come together and say, look, this is shared ground. I don't know that it will be, but it should be.
Right, and obviously you're going to have Democrats trying to make sure that they find a way for it not to pass because it'll make Republicans look bad, keep the issue alive, on and on and on. I think we can all agree that Republicans are playing defense when it comes to women's issues. Just take a listen to some of the coverage of Donald Trump's comments that have continued today. Take a listen.
Is what folks in his administration want to do, and certainly I think conservatives do want to restrict some of this, whether it's IVF, whether it's contraception.
Every single time abortion rights have been on the ballot since Roe was overturned, the abortion rights side has won.
You are one of, if not the smartest guys in the United States Senate. You know as well as I do that this bill will not redefine the field of battle for Republicans when it comes to women's issues, right? Okay. How do Republicans redefine the field of battle?
Well, listen, one of the things to understand, the position of Democrats on abortion is really extreme and outside the mainstream. In the U.S. Senate, every single Democrat senator supports unlimited abortion with no restrictions, literally up to the moment of birth, up to the 39th and 40th week, a partial birth abortion.
Right, but that's not what the field of battle is right now.
But there's a reason for that. It should be. That view, do you know 9% of Americans agree with that view? 91% of Americans say, whoa, 39th and 40th week, late term, that is extreme. And so what Democrats do, they don't want to defend their actual policy. And by the way, every Democrat has voted to strike down every limitation in the country and to legalize it up till the moment of birth. What they do politically is they try to change the terrain of battle. You know, Sun Tzu said every battle is won before it's fought. It's won by choosing the terrain. They don't want to defend their actual policies. Instead, what they do is they attack on IVF and they attack on contraception. Now, there are no Republicans that want to ban IVF. There are no Republicans that want to ban contraception.
Then why did Donald Trump say it?
I don't, because he misspoke, because he wasn't sure what to say. I can tell you, I've served in the Senate 12 years. I don't know a single Republican, none, who wants to ban contraception. Listen, I think contraception is a fundamental right. It needs to be protected. And everyone agrees, which is why Democrats suggest those mean old Republicans are going to take away contraception.
Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.